The Indiana Chamber of Commerce is a statewide business advocacy organization. We have members in all 92 counties, including all the counties in Northwest Indiana. We have members and board members in this part of the state, and this area is very important to Indiana's economy and to the vitality of the state. There are, from our view, a number of assets in terms of significant infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, industrial infrastructure. You've got this wonderful resource of Lake Michigan and the lake shore, so you've got attractiveness in terms of boating and leisure and outdoor activities as well. Certainly the proximity to Chicago for jobs and business activity going back and forth across the state line. Northwest Indiana, though, is sitting in a state that is, we think, much better positioned in terms of our business climate, in terms of state finances and stability, in terms of things like tax structure and business climate. Indiana has greatly, dramatically improved its business climate over the last 12 years, and that makes it easier for Northwest Indiana to compete with surrounding states and even other regions of the country in terms of our tax climate, in terms of our labor climate, in terms of our regulatory climate, regulatory burdens from things like IDEM, environmental management, and other things. So we view Northwest Indiana as much or more important area and region of the state as anywhere else in Indiana. Well, we've supported all of those projects and the legislation in many instances that was needed to bring those to fruition. We thought that the RDA was an important piece of legislation to begin to get the area to think regionally and to have a mechanism to do that had some funding behind it. This was, of course, a spinoff from the Major Moves legislation. The Illiana Expressway, we also thought, is extremely important. It will help with traffic congestion. It will create new economic development opportunities as businesses build out and locate around that Illiana Expressway, that sort of bypass around Northwest Indiana and Chicago for the traffic that's through traffic going on up into Wisconsin or southwest to Illinois and Missouri, or going the other direction headed towards Michigan or Ohio. And then the Gary Airport is an important asset given its close proximity to Chicago, given the location and the infrastructure that is there and that will be there in an enhanced way if and when the runway is extended. I am encouraged. I have been watching and admiring the mayor since she took office, and have been impressed with the approach and sort of the candor with which she's addressing the problems and communicating to the people of Gary. And I do think this is an opportunity for a revitalization effort that has perhaps a different outcome than has been the case over the last 20, 30 years. And I mean, Gary is strategically located in Northwest Indiana and relative to Chicago, and there's a lot of assets there, and it would certainly be our hope that we could leverage that, and we're interested and willing to assist anything on the public policy side of things that we might be able to assist. And so I hope to in the not too distant future reach out and have a sit down with the mayor and explore her vision for the area and see whether there might be some interconnections that the Indiana Chamber of Commerce could help. Well, I think the one thing I would point to first and foremost is visionary leaders from different industries, not just the technology sector, but others who are willing to come together and work together to develop and implement a vision for Indianapolis and central Indiana. By contrast, things in northwest Indiana, I think, have traditionally been a little bit more fragmented, and it's been harder to pull folks together and sort of get everybody rowing in the same direction. I see instances and evidence of that beginning to happen. I think the RDA is a good catalyst. The Northwest Indiana Forum does a good job as well. Some of the chambers have begun to merge, and by byproduct of that have become more regional and not just one particular city or town boundary. And I think that contributes to that. Well, I think you have some very outstanding entrepreneurs who had ideas and visions and worked on those, and you had a supportive environment and culture. You had people that were willing to look beyond just their business and their activities to be willing to spend some time and energy and share some of their talent for the better good of the region and the area, and develop things like training seminars and lectures and things where people can come together, learn and improve, as well as share ideas. It is challenging. I have a very talented communication staff. Let me stress that it's important to us because we have expanded our role and responsibility vis-a-vis the state of Indiana. The Indiana Chamber of Commerce, which has been in existence for 92 years, has evolved into more than just a business organization that cares about businesses and their success and their profitability or whatever. We have, with our new strategic plan that was adopted a few years ago, and with our long-term economic development action plan for Indiana called Indiana Vision 2025, we have taken it upon ourselves to take responsibility for Indiana's economic future. And we did that because we came to realize that elected officials come and go. Many people in the state feel like Mitch Daniels was an outstanding governor. But the fact of the matter was, he's term limited. Other elected officials are either term limited, or they come and go, they go on to other things, other higher offices, they get defeated, and it's really the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, which is the only statewide organization that's here for the long haul, and we have decided to take upon and accept that responsibility for Indiana's economic future. In doing that, we've taken responsibility and a focus and a vision that is beyond just business entities. And if you look at our revised mission statement, which was adopted about 3 years ago, it talks about the prosperity of the people of Indiana and their enterprises. And so that's why we care about K-12 education. That's why we care about workforce training and focus on things that will improve our per capita personal income and the livelihood of Hoosiers in all corners of the state and all areas of the state. And in order to do that, getting back to your question, we have determined and feel that it takes being able to reach out to people through different mediums. And so you're right. We have a bi-monthly magazine that has won 63 national and state awards that drills down into different topics. We do electronic newsletters on different topics to keep our members informed as to what's going on in the State House during the legislative session, what's going on with interim study committees in the summer, what's going on in Congress and our congressional delegation. And so we have electronic newsletters in all of those areas. We have a daily component of Gary Dick's Inside Indiana Business e-newsletter that talks about different topics. It also makes information available and promotes our training opportunities because in addition to our advocacy and public policy pursuits, the Chamber is very much about helping employers train their employees, understand the laws and the regulations, get in compliance and stay in compliance. And so we do some 50 employee training and regulatory compliance seminars a year, and so we've put out a lot of information through these different communication mediums to inform folks about that and how they can come to a training or purchase a publication. We take the regulatory compliance, the laws, boil them down into plain English, and make those as a reference guide that you can pull off the shelf and get an answer to a question without necessarily having to get somebody's meter running, which is important to small and medium-sized businesses like yourself. And so you have to slice this different ways because in this day and age, different people receive their information in different forms. Some people tend to be a little older, like myself, are still avid newspaper readers. Other folks, wouldn't touch a newspaper, or if they do, they look at the online version. And they're looking at blogs and other activities, Twitter feeds, following individuals who may be newsmakers themselves. And so because people are getting their information in different ways, we feel like we have to be communicating in all those mediums in a two-way mechanism. Well, we promote and shout out that we have achieved one of the very best business climates in the country. And business climates includes things like tax burden, availability of skilled workers, what's the regulatory environment, what's the legal environment when we talk about torts and product liability and those kinds of things. Talk about activities and we promote those. We don't have mountains and oceans. The closest thing we have to an ocean is in this part of the state with this great asset of Lake Michigan, and I'm sure the folks up here do and should promote the heck out of that. But we also promote a lifestyle. Indiana tends not to be as congested as other parts of the country. It tends to be safer. It tends to be a better place to raise children than in some apartment building where you're paying $3,000 a month for a little bitty spaces no bigger than this studio. And we have worked hard, as I mentioned, to improve our business climate rankings through our public policy efforts in the last 12 years have gone from about 30th, so lower half of the 50 states to this summer CEO magazine came out with rankings that showed that Indiana had the 5th best business climate in the United States, #1 in the Midwest, and the only state in the Midwest in the top 10 states. So if you're thinking about coming to the Midwest, Indiana's the place to come. And not to pick on anybody in particular, but I think there are a lot of indications that the state of Illinois, not just any one city, could very likely be the next Detroit and have to declare bankruptcy. We don't have those problems in Indiana. And for a business thinking about locating, that translates into a message that their tax climate's going to be stable. And I'm not going to move here and then get some gigantic tax increase because their state's finances are in such dire shape, as is the case just across the border to our west. Well, we've addressed that in a long-term economic development action plan that I mentioned earlier that is called Indiana Vision 2025, and any of the viewers want to see that, read it, access it. It's only 33 pages. You can download it or look at it online at indianachamber.com. That plan focuses on 4 key goal areas, or what we call drivers: outstanding talent, superior infrastructure, dynamic business climate, and a spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship and furthering that. Of those 4 drivers, we believe that first and foremost and the most important in at least the foreseeable future And we'll continue to work on all of those and make improvements, but number one is the outstanding talent. We are in a intensely globally competitive, knowledge-based economy. Strong backs are not necessarily enough to make and earn a living wage and have a decent lifestyle anymore. It takes a strong mind. And we've got some vulnerabilities there. We believe at the Indiana Chamber that it is not acceptable in the 21st century for Indiana to continue to have a 25 to 30% high school dropout rate. Because dropping out of high school in the 21st century is the equivalent of giving yourself an economic death sentence. So we've got to address that as best we can. We think that one of the ways to address that is the legislation that we supported and proposed last session to have publicly funded preschool for low-income, disadvantaged families, so that we can close the preparation gap between kids that show up in kindergarten or the first grade and they've spent the last 3 years sitting on grandma's couch watching The Price is Right, versus kids that show up and have spent the last 3 years in a preschool experience, and they know their numbers, they know their letters, they know that they're supposed to sit in their seat and raise their hand if they want to talk, and they're ready. Because the kids that aren't ready for kindergarten and preschool tend to be, isn't always the case, but tend to be the kids that aren't reading by the 3rd grade, are falling behind in middle school, and dropping out in high school. And we need every single citizen in this state, every single child, to come as close to meeting their maximum potential as possible. That comes in the K-12 area. It also comes in our adult workforce training, getting more productivity out of our post-secondary institutions, higher education. We've got to get graduation rates up. We've got to get time to completion down. It's not, in our view, acceptable to have students in a 4-year baccalaureate institution have them only producing 30 or 40% graduation rates, not in 4 years, but in 6 years. That's why we supported, and we think it's important, the legislation the General Assembly passed this year regarding the Indiana Career Council, which is going to look at all the different programs from pre-K all the way up to adult workforce training and see where those programs interact and how can we get the best return on investment, because there are always going to be limited resources. We can't just have unlimited funds to throw at our skills problems and our training problems. So we need to make sure we're using those as wisely as possible, and I think it's pretty well acknowledged that we're not doing that currently. We need to get a better bang for the buck of all the state and federal money that goes into education and workforce training. Well, I think the business helps education by opening lines of communication. And one of the other important pieces of legislation that passed earlier this year was the regional works councils, which are going to be set up on a regional basis to facilitate communication between employers and high school officials to share information about what skills do we need, what jobs do we have available, and what do kids need to do, start doing in high school, and they be able to ultimately have the skills to take and succeed in those jobs. We've gotten a little bit away from what some people used to call vocational and technical training, probably too much in the mindset that everybody has to go to college and get a 4-year degree. Everybody's not meant to do that. And there are a lot of jobs that are more demanding in terms of the technical skills and using technology and computers and things, but those skills can be accomplished in a 2-year associate's degree, a technical certificate, and in many cases pay a salary that is higher than what you can achieve with certain 4-year degrees. And we need to open those opportunities up. Many kids have better aptitude for those kinds of jobs and positions, but may not know they exist, and so the works councils will help foster that communication. The other thing is, we believe is a sort of an underutilized asset is all the money the state spends on middle school and high school guidance counselors. We would like to see more communication and collaboration between guidance counselors and employees in particular areas of the state, so that they know what's available, they know what classes the students take, and they can do a better job of career advising these kids, even at the high school level, rather than maybe having quite so much focus on just counseling and helping them with their scheduling. So that's a direction, and we've got a study in the works on that topic that is being pursued by the Indiana Chamber Foundation. We have a state that is better positioned to grow jobs and raise families than nearly any other state in the country. We ought to be proud of that. We ought to tout that. And Northwest Indiana is a critically important and highly valued region of our state that contributes to Indiana's overall economic engine, contributes to the vitality of our state and to the opportunities that lie ahead for the people of the state of Indiana.